Hey there, just a quick note. I just recorded this podcast with Cheyanne, and it's a lot of shop talk. We get pretty into implementation, but I will say, although that can be a dry subject, we're both from Massachusetts and have that humor, and it was Friday at 4, so it's a little loose. I can't remember how much swearing there was, but it was just a loose conversation. I'll just say that. So I really enjoy it because it's just like sitting down at a bar talking with people. But just a warning on that, it's just a little loose. We know for the first 5 minutes in that conversation, this customer sucks.
Yeah, I'd say that's actually a good number. About 5 minutes in, 3 to 5. I'd say
it's like a Zoom call. It's like you get on, you're like, oh, this dude sucks. How do I get it off? Like, oh, can somebody go unplug the internet?
Yeah, like my cat. I'm like, hey, can you just go shut the router off? It's fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm like, oh, what is that? Oh no, the school's calling. My daughter has diarrhea. I gotta go.
Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Welcome to the GSD Podcast. Getting it done. Services, success, and software. We'll talk with the pros that have been in the trenches, getting service teams off the ground, launching new types of groups to service customers, or running agencies that don't have a product attached to it. For the pros, by the pros. This is the GSD Podcast, and this is your host, Jeff Kushmerek.
So let's do this. We're going to start the podcast, right? We're going to get going. I didn't ask you how to pronounce your name, so you can call me a jerk if I get it wrong.
I mean, it is the capital of Wyoming. So
yeah, that's what I say. It is Cheyanne, right? Like but in these days, I take nothing for granted ever. There's like, no, you didn't see the accent on top of the Y. That means it's actually, a schwa in there. So we're not going to tell you. And so people on the podcast may hear me a little more relaxed. It's because I'm talking to another fellow masshole, but you're not a masshole anymore because you actually moved away. You don't live 30 minutes from where you grew up. Right?
Yeah, but I still consider myself a masshole.
From the North Shore, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. People
do you know I drove by the clam box the other day.
Oh, come on, you had to? Really?
There's an amazing I forget the name of the ice cream shop. You asked for it's right down the street from the clam box, and you ask for the key lime ice cream, and they crumble up the graham crust into the ice cream for you.
Oh yes, I used to go to Benson's.
Oh yeah, Benson's is legit. Yeah,
so
I think it's Benson's. Do they have like the milk thing? Yeah. That's the one.
So good. I'm so glad they're still there.
It's thriving. Absolutely. It's great. So you're a Guidex, right? So let's talk about that, right? Because this is one of those weird things where you do onboarding for an onboarding company. It's like mirror in a mirror.
It's interesting. Yeah. And a lot of the customers we onboard with our product. Hopefully that would be the case for everyone, right?
That would make sense, right? Yeah. We're going to put you in a sauna for the launch. Right?
Somebody actually said that this week. They were like, and I was like, if we did that, it would be a really big red flag, and I probably wouldn't be in this role. So, yeah, no, it is an interesting. It's the first time I've onboarded other softwares with a software, essentially like a really well-made software. Yeah. So it's kind of like it just flows very easy, and everyone really fully understands it. And when you sit down and you write out an entire process, it's a game changer, really. Yeah.
How do you do that? I'm a big Miro guy. Like I'm going to do Miro first, and then I break it down, and I show it to the staff, and they're like, no, you got it all wrong. You know what the fuck you're talking about or anything like that. But like, bleep that out, please. And that's what, and then we just go through, and they're like, no, and there's a million sticky notes on it. And then we wind up, eventually creating the templates inside the software and everything. Is that sort of how you want, you go about it that way, or for creating your process?
We actually build it in the software. So we start there. It's just so simple to add things and update your template as you go, that I'm like, this looks good. And then I send it to my team, and they're like, this looks not great. Let's do it this way instead. And you can just it's almost like a Google sheet, essentially.
Yeah.
Update it. It's just so much easier because everyone's in a different spot. now, especially with work from home, remote workers, all of that.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit more seamless, and you can change your process in like a couple clicks and be done with it.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Now let's talk about this. Everybody in implementation knows this, right?
Hopefully.
Everybody wakes up with the, hey, we just signed a new customer up this morning and they want to kick off tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Does that happen? Does that happen still? What do you do in that scenario when that pops up?
I scream first.
Okay. You you yell silently into a pillow.
Throw that chair across the room. Yeah. No, I work very closely with the sales team, and I'm fortunate enough to have a really good sales team that brings the right customers in. So I have notes in our CRM.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. They're mandatory fields at this point. You cannot close win that.
Speaking my words right here. Exactly. Yeah. I have now said, before I was like, you could perhaps, and now I'm like, you must make sure that nobody gets their commission unless they have an internal handoff and that form is filled out with the mandatory fields.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's funny because when I first started, I was treading lightly just to see, okay, who's going to play a game with me? Who's going to do this? Who's going to at least try it out before they just completely say no? Yeah. And all of them tried it out and it worked out really well. I don't even have to have an internal handoff call unless it's some sort of really specific customer. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's the first time, because normally you see like sales teams like, oh God, they don't even know the product. They don't know implementation.
What if there were a dog, which breed would you associate your sales team, most sales teams with?
A mix between a husky and a golden doodle.
Okay, that's nice. Because I'm used to dealing with Dalmatians. If you don't know, Dalmatians are the stupidest dogs in the world.
They're very cute.
Very, very cute. Get away with a lot of stuff. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you can lose 101 Dalmatians and can't find them. So.
Well, if you've got that straightened out, my point of view is that you've set yourself up, because what I've seen is you can do everything else after that, but if you haven't fixed that problem, sorry, like you're just taking a 50-50 shot on your customer being okay, right? Like, so, right? Because otherwise, you're gonna get the worst comment in the world, which is usually, don't you guys talk to each other?
Yeah, that is like in my nightmares.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do. There's just that, like, the little tear that comes out and everything. It's just the worst question. It's the worst thing that can ever happen. So yeah.
Can't walk that back. Once it's set on a call, you can't bring it back either. It's like, well, we do, but obviously we don't do a good job at it.
No, you know what? Okay, so if it does happen, right? I always try and preface my questions with like, so we've gotten the info from the sales team, but I want to hear it from you because we want to establish your joint success criteria. And there's a lot of difference between looking at stuff in a CRM versus hearing it from you. Now, if you're lucky, they won't say, well, what does the CRM say?
Yeah. Oh, I'm like, I don't know.
It's a game of poker. And I'd be like, okay, I like it. I like the game. Right.
What's funny is I feel like I should play poker because I have a very good face when things like these pop up, but I don't know how to play it at all. So I can't do that. But yeah, it's funny because I always start the conversation, introductions, all of those things. And then I'm like, do you have any questions? And if they have questions, then I'm like, okay, let me just keep reviewing what these notes say in our CRM. And then hopefully those questions will follow up with what
That's good. I like that. That's
so
good.
Then I just kind of start off with that. And hopefully, normally 98% of the time, you can get all that information from their questions.
Do you have a set duration for your implementations? Like, can your sales team say we'll get this live in 30 days, or is it like, we're not quite sure?
Yeah, we have a good point on understanding our reporting. We want to know exactly how long each customer is taking so that we can relay that information. Because 65% of the time, people are like, I want to be live yesterday. What do I have to do to just push this through? Yeah. And I'm like, well, you have some stuff that you need to do. So you have to be live in the next week. We'll say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it depends on the bandwidth, really. And that's essentially why I have my kickoff call, is so that they understand realistic expectations.
Yeah. So What is your basic? So some people do like multi-hour kickoffs, and I don't do that. I like to have like a quick little, hey, this is what we're doing. I'm used to more complicated B2B SaaS things where you're doing integrations and everything. And so it's like, we're going to come on site and we're going to map everything out and set you up and everything like that. So this is more of a, we're getting to know each other and we're going to give you some homework and go away. But that's for complex, like 9-month long integrations and things like that. So what is your sort of normal, like if everything was to go perfectly, how long would the kickoff be, and then what would the actions be that follow after that?
The kickoff, the call in general is 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I go through the entire roadmap, introductions, understanding their goals, all of that in 30 minutes or less. Yeah. It's never less than 30 minutes. So definitely 30 to 45. Yeah. And then I would say normally our customers that we have between 2 weeks and a month.
Okay.
No matter the size, the amount of integrations that they want to do, just because we've set up our process to have a dedicated individual for each task. Okay. So that's what I look for in my calls too, is, this is what you have to do. Who's going to do it? Somebody volunteer, and then it's on you to complete it in those days.
Is it on the customer or is it on somebody on your team?
Both. So the customer essentially starts it, and then we confirm it, and then they move on, put it into production, essentially.
Okay. That's great. That's cool. Yeah. Awesome. What are some of the classic pain points that will come up? And, I don't want this to be specific to the software, but, and be like, this thing's not working or whatever, but just in terms of like trends that you've seen.
That don't work. When you have too many people wanting to onboard, everybody wants to be involved, but nobody actually wants to do it.
Yeah.
Those are the most silent phone calls that I've ever had. And I'm like, there's 7 people. And I'm going over this, and so this looks like this is something that Rachel should be doing, and Rachel just is on mute, camera off, probably not even at her computer. Nobody knows where she's at, but someone else is like, yeah, she can do it. 5 minutes in, I mean, it's just a really wonky kickoff call when there's way too many people.
Yeah. The issues that I get the most are when champion signed with this person on the sales team, and then it gets pushed down to this level, and then the person you're interacting is like, what am I doing? What is this for? So they don't understand why it's important and things like that. Obviously, I think with your software though, people should recognize the value, like it's going to make their onboardings and implementations easier or whatnot, right? But so they like, thank God this is happening, or they're like, oh crap, like why can't I just keep using Smartsheet?
I don't know. By the time they get to me, they're like, I'm done with whatever they're using.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So honestly, that's where the sales team comes into play too, is you have to sell it really well. But a lot of the times people are just so fed up with the other products that are out there that they're ready for a solution and they want the help that gets there too. That's the biggest piece is, you can tell me all day I have to complete 55 tasks the next 3 days, but if I have no help, I'm not completing one of those at any point. That's probably the biggest piece. It's like not hand holding, but knowing that there's someone there if you need them.
Oh, that's a good point too. Yeah. Is there any type, and again, depending on complexity, some things aren't necessary, but is there any type of like coordinated training that maps in line with their sort of, the way I always view this is on the more complex stuff is like week 3, you'll be uploading data. So week 2, you're going to watch the video modules on uploading data or something like that. Do you have any of that sort of like tied in coordinated education?
Yeah. I think, if you are onboarding a company and you don't have any of that, there's zero.
How can you scale, right? Exactly. You have now turned into a trainer and an implementation person. Mm-hmm. And no, it's so funny because I've seen this movie so many times where you're like, can you just record that next session or record a session for them and then we can just keep using it over? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. I'm like, yeah, so don't get on live with them, record it, make it generic and send it so we can keep using it. What do you think eventually happens to that recording?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah, I'd like to know actually, because I refuse to do these. So.
Every time they wind up doing their customer's instance, I'm like, we can't reuse this. Like, let's say they're like, oh, I'm implementing for Hydro Flask today, right? Like, I'm like, oh yeah, just use our sandbox instance so we can just put that in our LMS. And then they're like, okay, so suddenly you see the Hydro Flask logo in the corner, and you're like, no, we can't use it. I feel like I've had that conversation 55 times or so.
Absolutely. No, that's a very good point. There's a lot of videos of just overviews of products.
Yeah.
That you can't use because it's so specific to whatever that person has recorded. I'm like, this is not helpful for anyone.
Yeah.
Why did you even send this to anyone besides the customer that wanted it? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. Yeah. There's been a lot of people just don't want to do that either. They just want it done for them already, and then they can go and duplicate it in their own instance.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting, because I always find that it's best if you do it either for that customer, or if you do a generic one, that it is so specific that it's interesting because everyone's a different package, right?
Yeah.
So people have different access levels. They have different resources that they have, features that they're all assigned to. You can't just send a generic one out every time.
Yeah.
So I always say just hop on the call with me, and then if you have questions, it's easier to do it that way.
Yeah, that's the thing. So many people I find are so scared to get on a call now, right? Like, well, they're fine with the structure. It's like I can have that 30-minute check-in call, but when there's an issue, I'm like, yeah, just call them up, and they're like, and like they saw a ghost or something like that. I'm like, yeah, just give them a ring, like Slack them and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Like humans do.
Right, exactly. Like if you were in an office, you would stand up and walk to that person's desk and be like, hey, do you have 5 minutes?
It's a novel concept, I admit.
It is. It's so interesting. And it's funny how people say things in email. So you get an understanding of their personality.
Are the keyboard warriors, or this is where we're going?
Yeah. But then they join the call and they are a completely different person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that you're pleasant. You're easy to work with. You answer the questions. You ask great ones. Where was that in the email thread?
That is what's called, I don't want to get the explicit rating like an NWA record here, but that's what's called a grin effer, by the way. Like that's the terminology for that.
Oh, that's a new one.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe the Urban Dictionary is up to date on that terminology.
I've not logged into that in so long. I should probably look at it.
Yeah, unfortunately that comes up like my daughter asks something and I'm like, oh, let's just pull it up. And then one of those things pull up and I'm like, nothing good happens when you click on Urban Dictionary in front of your kids. Like, I could tell you a hilarious thing that happened a few weeks ago, but there's no way I'm doing that on video. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about it after this then.
Yeah, as soon as I hit pause. Well, let me take a note on that.
Yeah.
I will tell you what that was. So, yeah, but I think you might have to sign a waiver as well too. But anyways, so I said Slack for a minute and then I realized I'm like, oh, did I just say Slack? And but like, how do you interact with your customers on the non-phone calls? Do you set up an implementation Slack? Is it just email? Is it in your system?
It's in our system, yeah. So we try to get them out of their email because there's just too much noise inside of it.
Yeah.
I get 50 emails a day, we'll say. I look at 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are important. The other ones are just, I'll deal with those tomorrow kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we communicate 100% in our system, more or less, until they're in there, they're ready to go, ongoing support. Then we have all of that support inside as well.
Oh, okay. So and then you transition to a CSM once they're live, or what happens? What's the model once they're up and running and live and good to go?
You can still communicate within the product.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want you essentially living in the product that you're living in daily anyways. So why get distracted in your email inbox, pick up the phone to call someone, look at all your text messages, and then never actually follow through and get the answer that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So we try to keep it all within house, essentially.
Oh, that's how, yeah. And it's all there too. Cause I used to say the reason why things like the software is so good is because you get on, I remember back in the days before all, GuideX and all the other ones are out there, we had to use Basecamp, for example. And it was the best because a decision was made in the system, right? On a task level. And then somebody who eventually will be a seagull and fly in and say, who said we were going to go with that logo or something like that, right? And then you're like, oh, let's pull it up here. But you're not pulling through Slack. You're not pulling through emails. And then you're like, oh, it looks like, you said that logo.
Like, let me zoom in really slowly.
Yeah, it was 10:53 on Friday, just last Friday, actually. Yeah.
You approved this logo and then we posted it. So
this is a very dry humor podcast. I appreciate this. Is everybody in implementation will appreciate this. I'm not sure anybody else will.
And nobody else wants that.
But these are the people I want to listen to. Like this is perfect and everything. So we started off talking before we started recording, maybe, about we get on a kickoff call and we know almost instantaneous. It's like mother's intuition, like this customer sucks, right? It happens, right?
Yeah.
Non-ICP sale, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What makes them suck the most, do you think, in that scenario?
I have absolutely no idea what they want. They think they know. Then they see the product. I mean, and this happens here. This happens at my old companies.
Oh, yeah.
So they think they know what they want. They were just yes manned the entire process. And then they're here and they're like, okay, so this is what I wanted to do. I'm like, this is not going to go well. Okay.
Yeah. Where's that AI?
Yeah. They're like, it's supposed to work like this, right? And I'm like, wrong, actually. So
and they're like, oh, that's no good. That's not good at all.
Yeah. And then they hone in on that.
Yeah.
With 90% of the other things that are working exactly how they want it to. They focus on this one thing that isn't going to work.
I call it the big red button because I had a customer that was like switching from one system to the next, and they were literally like, "Where's that big red button?" Right? And we were like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "I'm looking for the red button," and then we're like, "Well, what are you trying to do?" And they're like, "All I know is I hit that red button, and I get it a direct export to Excel." I'm like, "So you're looking for export to Excel, right?" Like, right? Yeah, that's right over here, right? But it's just like pulls it back to, let's get the job to be done. What are you trying to do here? Pull it back into, but they're right. They get so lasered in on that thing. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
The other fun piece is you have an executive sponsor, someone who knows that you need a product. You need something to make this seamless, to make it work, but then doesn't want to be involved in any of it. So they're like, oh, I'm going to delegate 105% of these tasks.
But still wants to do all the decision making that never happens.
Exactly. And then tries to make the decisions. And then the other person's like, this is actually how you do this job. You don't do it on a regular basis. So then they're like, well, why don't we do it like this? All on the call. Like,
oh, of course. The only time I can tell you from 20 plus years of consulting, the only time people get together and talk are on these calls. Like, it's like family therapy. You're like, okay, so here's our status report. We did X, Y, and Z, and go. And they're like, that's not what we were. You're like, no, it's that exactly. Then you're just like, everybody's slacking to each other. It's like, do these people talk at all? And it's just
literally. And then my poker face is just like,
yep,
it's going really well.
This is good. This is why we have these meetings, so we can flesh these requirements out. This is great. Very good. Yeah.
And it's pushed back another week because they have to meet internally again, and they're not going to. So then it's pushed again. So like, we're actually just going to make it.
Do you have any like penalties or carrots or things that you use for that scenario? Because you don't want to. I'm sure you've got some adherence to going live in certain time periods and things like that. What's your sort of buttons that you use to sort of push those things along? I'll tell you what mine is when you're done, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have just a big red date that says forecasted end date.
Yes. You're getting to where I am.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm like, this is the number that your executive sponsor cares about. So make some decisions 3 weeks before this.
Yeah.
Or it's going to stay red. You're never going to go live.
It's like the show 24. It's getting to the 24. Right? It's nobody's stopping that clock. Jack's running, his daughter's getting attacked by a cougar, but like it's still gonna, you only have 24 hours.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I do the same thing. I usually say, okay, let me do this, Cheyanne. Who's your favorite onboarding person on that you've ever met? Like, what's their name?
Oh, Mark Mitchell, my boss.
Omar.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I usually do. You know Omar? Yeah, Omar turns into a pumpkin in 17 days. And if you want to work with Omar again, that is, and you just recite what the implementation fee is again. And then they're like, what? And like, and then I'm like, well, that it doesn't have to be that way. And, you know, we'll give you like maybe another 5 days, but you have to do X, Y, and Z in that time, like essentially stop the BS and start working together and things like that. Yeah.
Right. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. The set duration in a dollar amount, right? Because you've probably, you know, this is the old, Jeff's going to talk about that thing again, but it's like, you know, free is a 4-letter F word, and they're not going to value your stuff if it's free. So if implementation's free, and by the way, doesn't end anytime, it's like, oh, we'll just show up, right? Like, is it Tuesday at 4? Nah, I'm not feeling that meeting. We can push that off for another week.
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Right.
What are they going to do? What happens to your team in that scenario?
We all cry collectively.
Yeah.
Then we come together and we just push at different angles. We're like, you know, this person, you still need to do this. You need to do this from different points of contact.
Yeah.
And then essentially we rely on the sales team. Bring it back in, bring that person that signed that contract back in and say, this is everything on the table. What do you want to do about it?
Because if you don't do that and people are like, whoa, why is he hanging on this point so much? It's like, let's say you've just got, you know, 4 implementation managers, right? And you're used to a certain volume every month. Suddenly, like you might be holding, how many do each implementation people have right now? 5, 10, how many live?
I think like 15 each.
Okay. So 15, right? Suddenly it's 20. Suddenly it's 25. And suddenly people not enjoying their life too much. And then you're like, do we need to hire more? Like, why? Because Omar's got 25 active projects right now. Why is that? Well, we can't end any of them. Why is that? Because they're ghosting and we don't have any leverage on this, right? So that's why I will use the, you know, Omar turns into a pumpkin and you need to pay another 5K or 10K or 15, whatever your charge is, you know, to extend this out or something like that. And, you know, hey, I got to run a business here, and, you know, that whole thing and everything.
And they're like, well, you know, we haven't done anything. It's like, yeah, well, that's not my issue at this moment. Like, the issue is you haven't done anything. So you're going to have to figure out how to do these things in this allotted time that you've already had 3 months to do it.
Yeah. Is that in the contract, by the way? Is it like, does it state, because that's my next point, is like 5 lines. Like, don't, you don't have to, some people, when I start saying that, like, you know, we don't want to write a whole SOW. I'm like, no, just little attachment, like little implementation, 30 days, throw your dollar amount in there. Yeah.
That I don't know about at this moment, but
Yeah.
other past jobs, yes, it says if you are not done by, I think it was 45 days at one of them, you will be charged X amount more dollars towards your onboarding fee. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you right now, though, it didn't really help that much.
Did you enforce it a lot? Interesting. Like, did you actually come up and really?
Sometimes but the issue again was the delegation down was, you know, somebody signed it and they're like, yeah, you know, Cheyanne will get it done in 15 days out of the 45. And Cheyanne has 25 projects on her plate and 26 is way too many, but they don't. So it's, it's 50-50, I'd say. Yeah. Like 98% of the time it probably works. Got it. Because nobody wants to pay more.
Nobody wants to pay more. You just have to know everybody's carrot, right? Like, you know, carrot, stick, whatever works the best or whatever. Like, and by the way, in that scenario that I just talked about, like, probably done 1 change order in 15 years of like that speech, right? It's just a position. It's not necessary, because you don't want to, like, you know, it's a business where you want to renew your customers, right? So to PMP them to death, like, you know, day in and day out, is going to cost you $2,000 a day. Like, you know, that works when you're building space shuttles and stuff like that. But like when you're just like, you know, you don't want them to be going out on G2 saying the implementation team sucks and, you know, they're yelling at me about X, Y, and Z. You know, ultimately you're trying to not mess with the revenue, but you're just trying to just push them along like a little bit. So it's a delicate balance. So absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, you know, every customer is different, as you're all aware, because you all have customers. Yeah. But I'm looking for you, like, to give you a trophy at the end of this, to be the best customer walking through this. Some of them, it's like, oh, that's motivating. Like, we can definitely do that, and they can work on it.
All I'm hearing out of this is that we need to treat our customers like 4th grade soccer teams.
Yeah. Everyone gets a trophy.
Yeah. You too will get an implementation, a live implementation. Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, to a level, it's true though. I mean, you have to work it up, and And that's why the kickoff call, in my opinion, is so critical, because you have to understand the bandwidth of their team as well as the bandwidth of your team. So like, schedule calls right on my call. We say, if you want to do it in 3 weeks, you have to put away X amount of hours every single week and get this done and get this pushed through.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I mean, that at least resets expectations if they were, miscommunicated before that.
You can like set it like, hey, just in case you didn't hear, probably need to do about 5 hours of homework a week and things like that, or something like that.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we have dedicated individuals for you, but we're only dedicated enough to your dedication as well.
Yeah.
So if you're not dedicated, we're kind of in the dark about that.
Absolutely. What's your like biggest problem that you're trying to fix right now? Or like your next initiative? I don't want to say like too much.
The next initiative that I have is, well, we're all actually working on, we all have quarterly initiatives that we have to work on, right? And mine's more feature-based. So I enjoy doing our process and then somehow putting it into the product.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's
we have like you said, we have a very interesting perspective, because everyone has an onboarding background, but we're onboarding onboarders.
Yes.
So if it's working for me, it should work for you as well, in some capacity. So that's essentially what we're trying to uncover through the processes that we see everyone come through. Like, where are their pain points? Do they match ours? Should we, somewhat figure this out in the product? So that's what we're working on now. Yeah. It's just adding new features.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. What have I missed? Like, coming into this, you're like, oh, I got to make sure I talk about this.
I think just like how critical it is to understand the product that you're buying and understand the product that you're selling and giving to your customers. That is, it's just, you can't turn it back. Once they don't understand what they bought, it is going to exponentially ruin your entire onboarding process. That timeline, throw it out the window.
Yeah. Are you getting pulled into pre-sales conversations at all?
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, just for people to fully understand what they're working with. And honestly, those are the ones that fly through onboarding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll consistently say it accelerates the deal. It does not slow it down. Because here you come in, here's Cheyanne. She's not on commission. Ask her any question. She's going to ask you questions back. She's going to say, oh, you're in this vertical? Yeah, we did X, Y, and Z for so-and-so. And then, your sales engineers, they don't know any of that stuff, right?
Right.
They're Labradors, not as dumb as the Dalmatian.
It's true. No, because they know the product so well, but I think they don't know the customers.
No, I feel, check me on this, but I feel it's like salespeople go in, they set the relationship up, and then the sales engineer is like, right, we have these 57 features. Yeah. Our competitor has these 52 features. So these 4 features right here, you know what I mean? They know those things in and out, demo the crap out of it. But then a customer is like, I don't know why I keep going to the Midwestern voice. I'm in manufacturing, right? Like, how am I going to set this up for my blah, blah, blah? And they're like, and then it just dies at that point.
Yeah. Right. No, I've definitely seen a couple calls like that in the past where I'm like, you had it. Like you had it in your hands and you just dropped it so hard. But it's like, how do I bring these two together? Like, product is great. Their process is not. So let's just, like, they know that it's not, or they wouldn't be in this call with you.
Yeah. That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about it. Are you helping them map to a new process, or you're just basically saying, like, what are you doing now? We're going to map it in here. Like, do you help them define some of that? I mean, if they want to, right? Some people,
Some people are so stuck in the ways that they have their process now that they're like, we just want to, whatever feature that they want out of the product today. Like, we just want this. So let's just shift everything over. But then others are like, I'm not even going to give you my process. It is so horrible that let's just start over.
Yeah. Don't look at it. Yeah,
like,
don't judge me.
I have to, but don't even look at it because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting mix. That's one of the questions I ask is like, where do you want to go with this? Where do you want, what are your pain points? How can we fix them? Yeah. And then let's just, figure it out as we go. Okay, we can do it.
you can, like,
right? Yeah, like we could do it that way.
Yeah,
let's do it the other way instead.
Or we could do a little planning up front.
And just a little bit of homework would be fine.
Yeah, Yeah, I found helpful, give them like, hey, here's a process diagram, or like, here's an X, or this is how 1,500 other customers do it, and stuff like that. But
yeah, I do. I love the customers that ask, what do you normally see, when they have absolutely no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what I normally see is just chaos. But usually you're going to just send me over everything and then we're going to tell you to fix it. So,
yeah. And as always, implementation, the hardest gig in the company, and they get it done, roll up the sleeves and go from there.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I agree. There's just a lot of moving parts in every, and all of them are done in a certain way.
How much do you have to go back to product and say, like, we need this feature in 3 weeks, or these people are going to churn?
So we're very transparent on what we're releasing, and we give the customer full reign to ask for a product or a feature. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a really good product. It's a very good so it's interesting because if they want something, we normally have some sort of workaround already, or it's being built into the product. It's going to be released at the end of the quarter. So I would say only twice, but they've come back.
Okay.
Released it, because we say, okay, like, yes, this actually works. We send out the bat signal and say, who else wants this?
Yep.
Like 90% of them come back and say we want it too. So we kind of put on the docket and get it going.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been great. Like, classic implementation conversation where it's like, yeah, that's kind of how it is. And,
yeah, it's like, this is shop right here. This is exactly how it works.
This is all shop talk. This is, missing the bar. We should have had drinks, but I have to go to a school play after this, and that's not a good look. Daddy smells like Sunday is not a good thing, so we don't want that. But so let me ask this. I hate asking you this because now you're like down in Florida. But like, it's February, right? So we're in the middle of winter. But what is your hunker down in the winter? You're not even doing that. I'm like, so like, what's your non-work fun thing that you're doing for the winter time that's not even winter, for a seasonless environment?
It's so funny. I fly away from Florida in the winter a lot to like snow. Yeah. So I do like a snowboarding trip every year, and I kind of leave. But if I'm here, there's a lot of me like on my bike on the weekends, taking my hammock to some random trees and like reading a book. It's
different than my weekend. I'm gonna say that. Yeah.
Inside by the fireplace, reading some nice books, watching.
Yeah. That's nice. You just enjoy that while you got it. I remember that. I remember getting the Globe Sunday morning, Charlestown roof deck, reading paper. Not a care in the world. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you willing to just have an open, honest, candid conversation, shop talk, implementation. It's a hard gig. We love it for some. We're probably all just psychotics and we love it. And there's probably a lot to analyze here, but it's been great chatting with you. And hold on for a minute. I'm going to make sure we get all your LinkedIn stuff and everybody knows where to find you and everything like that. And just hold on and we'll work out a couple of logistics and we're good to go. But thanks so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was very beneficial. It was fun.
Awesome.